Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Movies. This is episode 2.5. I'm Ryan,
I'm Shane.
and today we're going to be talking about I Saw the TV Glow. So this is our second half episode, the shorter ones where we can explore like one movie in more detail without necessarily being constrained to a specific genre or anything.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Uh,
So
this,
yeah,
yeah, I Saw the TV Glow was a movie that came out this year, um, originally at a film fest. I forget which one, but and then in May it comes out. I think in January it premiered at Film Fest, and then in May this year it came out first with a limited release and then theatrical release. It's an A24 movie with Jane Schoenbrun.
yep.
Schoenbrun.
I think that's how Schoenbrun, maybe.
Schoenbrun. Who directed it? It's her, I think, third directed movie, feature length, something like
Yeah.
that. And it stars, I think, most notably, Justice Smith is kind of the the lead role, perhaps.
Yep. Weird little fact. This is produced by Emma Stone.
That's right. I
Yeah.
noticed that. I think just this time around, I actually ended up rewatching this. I had seen this in theaters, so I wasn't too sure if I'd rewatch it this early, but I did end up rewatching it, and I noticed that just on the credits. I think how
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah. So when it popped up, I was like, that's random. So, uh, just so everyone knows, we are going to be spoiling the movie. So if you haven't seen it, uh, go and watch it. And I think kind of a crucial like context for the movie is that the director is transgender. I believe they're
Yeah.
non-binary, so I think they use like they them pronouns. I don't know if I mean I think that's what it seems like from the internet. Uh, so really, the whole movie, like I think that's kind of crucial context to understand the movie because otherwise, I think it would be more confusing than it already is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good to know too. Just in general.
Yeah.
Um, so
So yeah, I had never seen the movie until just recently. I know. Did you see it in theaters?
I did. I saw it on its limited release, and kind of frantically trying to see it before it got out of its limited release. Um, and I loved it the first time I saw it, and now it's finally streaming on. I think is it on Max?
Yep.
On Max. So this is my second time watching it in a pretty short period of time, like 6 months or something. So
And it's still held up on the second viewing.
yeah, I think so. I think there's some things that I thought were a little, I think particularly in the second viewing, um, I was maybe a little more. Uh, I think I noticed a little bit more the kind of the amount of monologuing. I think in theaters, kind of the first time, it was just kind of like emotional enough and like impactful enough that I didn't really notice or care too much. But I think this time, especially where like I knew where everything was going and everything, and I think that all kind of didn't quite build up as well for me the second time around. But I think the first time I didn't notice any of that. I enjoyed it actually maybe, but
Yeah, I mainly, as far as the monologues, I feel like there's one sort of gigantic monologue sort of
yeah,
toward the end, when Maddie like comes back, and then there's like the constellations all around, and
yeah,
that's like a she has a long, long monologue. Um, but aside from that, I didn't really notice it too much. But maybe I was also kind of just wrapped up in it. Uh, but
yeah,
yeah, basically a little plot summary is sort of that. Uh, well, it starts off with young Owen, played by Ian Foreman, who's in middle school, and he's it's the '90s, and he meets Maddie, who's a fan of this TV show called The Pink Opaque, and he has never seen it because he can't stay up late enough. But she like gives him a VHS tape, I think, or she invites him
yeah,
over to her house
right.
first. So he watches an episode there, and then eventually a couple of years pass, and she's giving him VHSs of the episodes because he can't watch them live. And uh yeah, and then eventually he goes over for another sleepover, and to watch the show, and she wants to run away from her abusive household, and then Owen doesn't want to run away, and then that's sort of where the mystery goes. She sort of just disappears, and then the movie goes from there. Yes.
Yeah. And uh kind of like crucially at the end, right, she comes back and
Yeah.
is like a very like kind of mysterious return where she claims that she's been in the pink opaque.
Yeah,
Um,
it's 8 years later.
right. And I think like he even has like is this the point where like you see him with a big flat screen TV from Amazon or
That's
something he's
that's
opening?
more toward the end. That's
Even
more
later,
toward,
okay.
yeah. But the he is working at a movie theater, and like Connor O'Malley is his manager, who like gets blown by employees in the back room.
Yeah, that's right.
But when he popped up, he's like a comedian. But when he popped up, I did not expect to see him in this movie either. Or also like Phoebe Bridgers is in this,
Yeah.
and there's like a couple other musical cameos that I wasn't familiar with. But like I was like, this is like a weirdly like there's a weird amount of cameos and people in these random little parts.
Yeah, that band playing when they're at the bar or whatever.
Yep.
The I think I looked it up. I think it's the sloppy something, sloppy James or something. I
Yeah, something
forget.
like that.
Uh, but also like side note about that, like I thought the music there was like really rad. I was a fan of that music.
Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, something I noted from the beginning of the movie is that it is set in the 90s, and a very small detail is that it starts in 1996, and Owen is wearing Jordan 7s, which came out in 1992. So I like that he doesn't have like the newest version. He
Yeah.
has like a slightly older one, which is a little more realistic. I feel like that's a thing with movies set in the past, that it's like if it's set in 1971, everything is from 1971. But it's like, well, they would have had a bunch of stuff from the 60s probably, right? Like
Yeah.
not everyone has all the new stuff right away. So that was like a tiny little detail that I don't even know if that was intentional, really, how much thought they put into that, but I noticed it and I thought that was kind of cool.
That's cool. A nice little tidbit that I don't think everyone would notice right away, and that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, the high school is called Void High School, which,
Yeah.
when shortened, is VHS.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yep.
Oh, that's neat. That's funny because this time around, I don't think I noticed the name of the high school the first time at all. And then this time I saw it on the board kind of early on. I saw it said Boyd High School, and I was like, I just thought it was like, you know, oh, like maybe about emotion or something and whatnot. I still didn't really think that much about it, but I was like, it's interesting that it's called Boyd, right? And I didn't even put together that it spells out VHS. That's cool.
It does spell it VHS, but also, like, I feel like a void is kind of what Owen is feeling throughout the movie, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
totally.
Also, he has like a pink sleeping bag, obviously, which like sort of the gender dysphoria of it all is kind of involved. Like he's wearing pink in a lot of scenes and stuff like that. But
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that's really like prominent in all the scenes, and I remember this the first time and the second time, I mean, it's unavoidable, right? It's like this the lighting, right? I mean, whenever the TV glows, right? The TV glow is always this like either this like vibrant pink or this like really kind of like neon digital blue, right? Like
yeah,
and those two colors are, of course, like the trans flag and everything, very important in that community. So like, makes sense that every time the TV's glowing, it's one of those two colors. And
yeah. I
yeah,
noticed a lot of times there was blue and pink in a
mhm,
scene, and I thought it was really cool the way the scenes at night, the way the TV lit people's faces, and
yeah,
so everything was dark, but just that TV light is glowing right on their face. And I thought that was kind of, I don't know, it's something you wouldn't see in most movies. That's kind of like a modern thing where people's like phones or screens will light up people's faces, but that's like a very modern like way of lighting things, and it's pretty realistic.
yeah, totally. I also think like just in general, all the lights, the I mean, the lighting, of course, was fantastic in this movie, but also just a lot of the cinematography and like the choreography of how people move with relationship to the lights and how the cameras moved, I thought was like really noticeable, especially the second time around. But um, and I thought that was like really impactful and helped build what sometimes was like maybe not seemingly a very impactful scene to still be like theatrical and emotional because of that like underlying stuff, right?
Yeah, I noted that the cinematographer is Eric Yu or Yue. So I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Yue. But I was very impressed by the cinematography too. I thought even just like a basic like establishing shot of a house or something, like there would always
Yeah.
be kind of an interesting composition.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. There was one shot specifically where like um I think it was Owen was walking through a hallway in the school, and on the left side was like these open windows with like this like again like digital blue coming in from the left side, and then on the right side there was like uh I think it was just like posters or something that were like glowing this like pink, right?
I
And
think I noticed the same thing. I
uh
think at least what I'm thinking of, he like walks through a hallway with windows on each side, but there's one side has all pink like gels
uh
over the windows, and the other
oh,
side has
that's
all
what it is.
blue like gels over the windows. And
Okay.
and like there's also like all these like motivational posters on the walls and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I feel like the movie does have a very like dreamy atmosphere where even like the real world, quote unquote, is like still feels dreamy and strange, and it has that tone throughout.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think that is the same shot I was thinking of. And that makes much more sense that it's just like the gel on the windows that's providing that light. Um, but yeah, that whole sequence where like where Owen's like walking through the school, I think it's really early on too, but you get that light scene, you get um all the motivational things on the wall, and a lot of them like are like army, like one of them's like pain is weakness leaving the body and stuff, and all this
Yeah,
um kind of interesting thing.
and I
Even
think
yeah, but
sorry, I was gonna say I don't know if it's the same shot or not, but there's also a scene of him walking through the or what I don't know if we should say him. I guess
yeah, maybe
whatever.
just
We'll just say
Owen.
him.
Yeah,
Oh, and Owen's walking through
whatever.
the hallways, and the the drawing of everything that Maddie would write on the VHSs is like being drawn on the screen. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember that. It would
Yes.
say
Oh
like
yeah.
episode 405, and it would say you'll cry at this one or something like. And it would have little drawings and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And
The
I thought
little
that was
drawings were cool.
yeah, I thought that was a nice touch. And um, there's some extended like montage scenes where like they'll play like a whole song and just have just to set the mood, I guess, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think it did all that stuff really well. Um, like I think that pretty much the whole time, except for again, I think the second time around that monologue in the planetarium, kind of, I don't know, I loved it as much the second time around, but I feel like for the most part throughout the whole movie, um, I was certainly feeling pretty engaged even the second time around, um, which was cool. Like I feel like even during those montage scenes or when there's just like the music going on or anything that's happening, I feel like they do such a good job between the cinematography, the music going on, and all this stuff to make you still feel theatric and everything at the same time, which is cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think the beginning I was very engaged and I was just going with it. I was like, I don't know where this is going, and it's very unclear, but I'm like, I'm here for it. But I think that monologue with the constellations and everything, I think that was one of the weaker scenes in my opinion, just
Mm,
because like I think the way the movie uses the pink opaque as a metaphor, it was a little like muddy to me. And so
mhm,
when Maddie is saying all this stuff, I think I'm not sure like what we're supposed to be thinking about it, because to me it just sounded like nonsense.
mm.
Like of like, oh, like we're inside the TV show, that's the real us and stuff like that. And I could just be missing things and stuff like that. But I don't know. It just didn't come across to me, I guess, maybe the way it was intended to. Like it didn't seem profound
Yeah,
to me, and maybe it wasn't supposed to, but that's how it seemed. It seemed like it was like a big climactic scene of realization or something, but it kind of just came off as not making much sense to me.
I think to me that part, especially the first time around, I think I really thought at that point that it was drawing on parallels of like not just like the transgender metaphor um and like theme that was going on throughout the whole movie, but I thought at that point it was also trying to like maybe pull at some like mental health strings of like um you know this person like did they really go into the pink opaque like or are they just like kind of in this crisis moment and how do you deal with that, right? um
Yeah.
where like they're talking about how they like paid someone to bury them alive and stuff, and to me like part of that felt like obviously there's and maybe it's not even just mental health beyond the fact of just like uh dealing with getting out of your body or like out of the situation that you're in that's still around the transgender theme. I don't know, but like yeah, I don't know. That was definitely a weird part for me too. Of like, why are you going so in depth into this thing that doesn't feel like realistic, right? Or
Yeah, exactly. And so I was also thinking about that where sort of maybe in a more traditional narrative, Maddie would be presenting like a way out for Owen. And that does like it seems like that's what it's going for thematically, where it's like in theory, at the end of the movie, Owen doesn't go with Maddie, and then he ends up just living in the closet and just like horrible, awful life, terrible. So he should have gone with her, and he should have like buried himself in a hole, I guess. And like, so it was kind of strange that the good path is actually like something that doesn't like make much sense like within the context of the movie. So I
right.
think that's where I had like the where the metaphor didn't work fully for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Not that it's necessarily an issue, because maybe it's interesting like that it is like a difficult path to like transition and do all that stuff. Like you're changing your whole identity and all that. So I'm not trying to say it's anything wrong with it or that it's a criticism. It was just something that while I was watching, I think I had like it was just my brain was kind of caught on that and I wasn't able to fully accept like the metaphor.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like one thing to bring up here, right, is that uh, this movie is so it's just really well made. In
Yeah.
terms of like the metaphor and the theming and everything. Uh, but an important acknowledgement is like we are not necessarily the target audience for that
Yeah.
piece of this. You know, uh, uh, yeah, neither of us are transgender, uh, and so like we aren't exactly the target audience for that metaphor itself, which is just I think just an important piece for everyone watching.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are a lot of people who this like really affected really strongly, and just the depiction of how Owen is feeling, like they probably felt very seen by that, and
Yeah,
that's like great. And I definitely like appreciate the movie that it was able to that the director Jane Schoenbrun was able to like portray that in such an honest way and that it affected so many people. So I
yeah,
think that's obviously a great like factor of the movie's impact on people.
yeah. And I think that's one of the things about like this director. They're able to put so much like raw, sort of like maybe not necessarily what's the word? Not unfiltered, but like just personal like meaning and emotion into it that can connect with so many people and in a way that like if a uh if uh, I don't know why Wes Craven came to my mind, but if Wes Craven, for example, rest in peace, but if he made this movie, uh it'd be weird, but also he would not be able to put in all that emotion and anything, right? A
Yeah.
straight man or anyone, right, could not put in the same emotion that someone
Yeah.
who has made some of the has been through some of that experience can, right? So
Yeah. And even like the little moments, like it's not like we couldn't relate to it 100%. Like there
Oh
was
yeah.
one part that I thought was very funny where, uh, and I will say this movie, like, well, its genre categorization is kind of strange, but maybe we can get to that after. Because I
Yeah.
did think in the beginning there was quite a few funny moments where that were sort of just relatable coming of age moments.
Yeah.
And like there's one part where Maddie's eating lunch alone on the bleachers, and Owen like walks up to her and he doesn't even say anything at first. It's like very awkward. I'm like, just say something, please, you know.
Mhm.
But and then he sits down and he's like, hi, and then whatever they start chatting and she's like, I like girls, right? And he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. She's like, yeah, my friend whoever like said I tried to touch her tit and like that's not true or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, whatever. But then he asked to come over and watch another episode of the Pink Opaque, and she's I forget the exact thing. She's like, I like girls, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, it wouldn't be like that. And, like the way he like stuttered and like the whole
Yeah.
performance of it was very. It felt like the way a 15-year-old boy would react in that situation, or a 15-year-old
Definitely.
whatever person, I guess any 15-year-old in that situation would react. The awkwardness of being a teenager, I think, is something that anyone can relate to. Kind of is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I will say like another piece of this, right, is like my lens on this movie is you know I'm not transgender but I am queer, and one really important piece of like queer cinema, I guess you could say, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? And many people in the queer community get very attached to that movie and have been like, you know, love it, right? Not movie, sorry,
The
show,
show.
love it, and have seen like every season so many times and whatever, right? And you could imagine that the Pico Pig um, could be like a analog to that, right? For me, like part of my queer coming of age, actually, I attribute part of that to the TV show Supernatural, which we
Which you've seen
whole
about a million times, right?
yes, and I didn't say, I was a little dug into a hole, a little obsessive about that, right?
James Padalecki, right? His name.
Jared Padalecki.
Jared Padalecki. I was
But
close.
listen, don't help me, right? um, but yeah, and so like I think that there is a lot of like we aren't necessarily the target audience for every piece of this movie, but I think there is a lot of relatable parts with whatever lens you're coming into it with, whether it's just like coming of age or uh, like being a TV adjacent to a cinemaphile or whatever, right? Or in the queer community or in the transgender community, like there's a lot of different lenses to look at this at that I think are all uh, worth. I don't know. The director did really well at making this movie relatable
Yeah,
in
and
some way.
that beginning section I think is very accurately portrays just people who are kind of lonely and
Yeah,
lost, getting attached to media or like just getting attached to something. It could be anything, and sort of putting like all of their themselves into that. And yeah, I thought that was just an accurate, interesting depiction of that.
I completely agree. One thing, so this movie is like so emotional and has like all these layers to it, which is really great. But I also want to address one thing that has nothing to do with all of that real quick, since it came up a minute ago, and which is that um, Justice Smith and Ian, uh,
Orman.
yeah, young Owen, right?
Yeah.
Um, both do pretty good jobs, but it surprised me that when I actually watched this the first time, I didn't realize that when they switched to Justice Smith, that uh, the character was supposed to be 15. I assumed that it was like senior in high school time. I missed the whole like 2 year gap or whatever, and I just missed that. And watching it this time, I feel like on the
It didn't
bleachers,
work.
what? Especially, you know what it was like one of the early scenes with Justice Smith. He's the characters at the carnival um with with I think their mom, I think, and the two of them are like walking around and stuff, and then eventually they're like sitting down somewhere, and Justice Smith has this like cotton candy, and he's kind of like hunched over, and I feel like they're like trying to make like I feel like they told Justice to like be small,
Yeah.
like
Right. He's the biggest 15-year-old. Like he's like 6 feet tall and like it just doesn't really work. Like he has a deep voice and like he just he I we looked at I watched this with my girlfriend and we looked it up and they were Justice Smith and the person who played Maddie, Bridget
yeah,
Lundy Payne, they were 28 and 29 at the time. And they're playing like 15 and 17 or something. So it just doesn't,
yeah,
especially Justice Smith playing a 15-year-old, like that didn't really work. And it wasn't necessarily anything with his performance. I think he
uh-huh.
did have a good performance, but just the fact of being like almost 30 years old and trying to be a convincing 15-year-old just doesn't work like in a
Yeah,
movie usually. So,
I agree.
and another thing with the time gaps, like at the
Yeah,
end of the movie, it jumps forward 20 years, and Owen looks like sickly and like he's like on the edge of death. But
yeah,
then his theater manager, Connor O'Malley, is looks the exact same. He looks like he hasn't aged a day. So I was like, is this literally supposed to be 20 years later, or is this
right,
like, or is he just like on the brink of death because Owen's not living as like his true self?
right.
And also, Owen says that like he has a family now, but uh, we never see the family. So
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be real or fantasy either. So I think it was a lot of those elements that just had a lot of questions for me, and maybe it was trying to sort of have a dreamlike logic, but
Yeah,
I don't know that it fully worked for me, all those choices.
yeah, and I think that's um, like I feel like it's one of those things you like wish that they had like a a perfect actor or something for each age that would both like look like not too far off from the same person, but also look more appropriate for the age and things like that, right? Um, but I think like one thing is like it was just surprising to use. I think Justice when you have um the young Owen
Yeah.
character actor already. Like I feel like that actor looks more. You could have just called him 15 at that point too, and
Yes, and he was a good actor.
yeah,
I thought he did very good in those first scenes.
yeah. Um, so I was surprised. Like, yeah, I think like watching through it this time, I realized that it wasn't like a jump to end of high school. It was like a jump to the beginning of high school, and yeah, I was surprised that they jumped actors that early. I thought they would have. Yeah, I thought they maybe could have kept with Ian for that 15 age group too. But
Yeah, but
that being said, Maddie had the same actor the whole time, which uh, I think, right? I don't think Maddie switched actors even when.
no, it was the same actor at the beginning. She was 15, then 17, and then I guess whatever, like 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I will say that I think this was interesting that we had this episode right after Eraserhead because by the end of the movie it felt very Eraserhead, like
Yeah.
the way the movie ends. Um, so I just thought that was kind of a similarity. And speaking of the ending, I
Mhm.
heard in well, I think I saw it in an article maybe. Someone said that there was an originally a different ending
Oh.
where Owen it would be all the same, except Owen goes in the bathroom, and when Owen cuts themselves open, and the TV light goes out,
Mhm.
then Owen goes out and starts apologizing to everyone, and then somehow Owen goes out into the light, basically, and then maybe he goes out a door into the light, and maybe it's
Interesting.
sort of a depiction of it's maybe a more hopeful
Mhm.
ending, but I felt like the ending as it was extremely bleak, like
Yeah.
very, very bleak. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think I don't know. That was just an alternate ending that apparently they didn't end up going with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one interesting thing about also you brought up like the family, right? Like I think that one thing that can be really hard for people um, in the queer and transgender communities, just collectively, right, is if you have a family, right, and then you start to, and then you are like trying to come out, right? That is a much harder. It can be a much harder experience, and in a way, like maybe that's why it's a more bleak ending, right? I don't know, but like I can imagine like if Owen maybe like went with Natty during that whole thing earlier and maybe was able to transition during that time or whatever, um, follow the metaphor that way. Um, it would have like before Owen had a family and was like established in that way. Obviously, it wouldn't have been a bleak ending, but also, um, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing about
Yeah,
having a family at that point.
and I think the ending there is that shot where it says there is still time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sort of like just stating like the message of the movie to like the intended audience.
Right.
Um, and then the ending with Owen is so bleak because that's sort of telling people like this is the potential ending if you don't live your true life, as your true self. That
Right.
you will have a tragic ending. So it's sort of a cautionary tale, I guess.
Yeah, like it depicts it as bleak, not trying to be like, you know, like this is the only ending, right? But as a like warning tale, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
it ends with those words of there is still time.
Yes.
Um,
And
which, yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say like that kind of like I felt that, like when those words come on at the end, I feel like it's like uh a very emotional ending.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was very effective in like it's such an abstract movie, but its message is pretty direct. And I think at least since I knew the context of like what the subtext of the movie is, I like understood the message
Yeah.
to a pretty good amount. And for such like an abstract and strange movie, I think it told its message in a very clear and effective way, and emotionally affecting for a lot of people, obviously.
Yeah. And it definitely is like an abstract movie, right? Like I think watching through it, like I don't know if everyone will love this movie just because some people might not like that abstractness necessarily. Um, I mean, it's like with Eraserhead, right? Like you were kind of like, I don't know if you're gonna love this, or I think at the beginning of that episode last week, which if you haven't seen last week's episode, go watch that. But
Hmm.
I think at the beginning of that episode, you were like, or once we started talking about Eraserhead, you were like, I don't know why I picked this one. Like, I, I'm nervous to hear what you think or something, right?
It was a crazy choice.
Yeah, and I think this movie not quite to that extent, but does have that abstractness of like, it's not necessarily for everyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, I watched this with my girlfriend, and she's basically said that she didn't like that it didn't have more of a narrative like push. Like it
Right.
kind of, and that's kind of just what the movie is. It's setting the tone, and you're with the characters, and it doesn't have a traditional story arc where
Yeah.
things pushing the plot forward. So for some people, that's just not going to appeal to them, and that's fine. But that's just not what the movie's really going for. And I think for what it was going for, it did it very effectively.
Yeah. It's funny. Before we do any of these, I like to look at thoughts on the internet about these movies, as any self-respecting podcaster probably, but so I was looking at a few thoughts about it, and one thing, I was like, I think when you Google this movie, one of the things that comes up is like this Reddit post, and like one of the first comments on this Reddit post is like, this movie might have been the worst thing I've ever seen. It had no plot, no character development and stuff, and I was like, all right, wow,
Like not really meeting the movie halfway or like
yeah,
because that's
right,
not what the movie's going for really.
exactly.
And like but
Also,
some
that's what you get
people
for looking at Reddit, I guess.
yeah, there you go. That's where you made your mistake.
But
Um all right, well, if that's it for I Saw the TV Globe, Ryan, would you rate it?
Yeah. So this time around, I rated it 4 stars. Before, I had it rated at 4.5. And I did bump it down this time. I still think it's a great movie, but as I mentioned a lot like I think that long monologue towards the end uh, kind of got me this time. So I think 4 for me.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5 stars. I was kind of between 3.5 and 4, but I ended up going with 3.5 for me. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty great movie and definitely unique. And Jane Schoenbrun is an interesting voice that I'm curious to see what they direct next.
Yeah, me too. It'll be great to follow them. Um, Speaking of following people, though, I don't want to be that person, but hopefully, if you've been watching this show and if you're this far in, hopefully you enjoyed this. So, you can follow us, it turns out, on any of the podcast streaming apps that you're using. Um, on Spotify, you can collect like automatic downloads, so you don't have to worry about not having service or something when you get the chance to watch us on like a long car ride or anything. Yeah, so follow us there. We are Mind Your Movies on most streaming sites, and our social medias are.
Mind Your Movies podcast on Instagram and Mind Your Movies on Letterboxd. Yeah, and also you can check out our YouTube, which is also Mind Your Movies podcast, if you want to see the video. Uh, Also, there may have been a slight technical difficulty for this video, so that's why we look completely different than the beginning of the video. We had to re-record the outro, but that's okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't look too far into
Yeah, if you listen to the audio, you'd never know.
it. That's right. That's right. Um, and yeah, so leave us comments wherever you find us. You can also shoot us emails at is it mindyourmoviespodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
Reach out to us. Let us know what you think of the podcast. If you have specific ideas for these half episodes, our full episodes, we are trying to stick to our genre generated ideas. But these half episodes, we are happy to explore kind of more recent or more audience picks, perhaps.
That would be cool. Yeah, and if you have any questions or anything, we could probably respond on the show at some point.
Yeah, totally. So follow us wherever you find us. Let us know what you're thinking. Give us the 5-star rating. We got mouths to feed.
Yep. All right.
Cool. I guess that's it.
Also, I like your Eraserhead pocket protector.
Thank you. That's right. Yes, if
Call
you're
back to
watching
episode
this,
2.
that's right. If you're watching and you've been watching all along, you might remember in episode number 2, I mentioned that at work I'm wearing a pocket protector this year, and that's right. I'm exposed. I'm at work right now, so there's the pocket protector. I got a new hip writing device. It's a hip bone pen.
Oh wow, that is
That's
literally
right.
hip.
I guess I have to. Yeah, I guess I have to say that for the podcast
Yeah. Well,
listeners.
also
But
I can see it, but I had no idea what that was. So
oh
thanks for
well.
telling me too.
All right. Well, that's it for this one. Make sure to join us in our episode number 3 coming out next week, which will be on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs. My pick for that was Beetlejuice, and Shane picked
What's up, Doc?
making
So
our
the
episode.
episode, What's
Yeah,
up, Beetlejuice?
What's Up Beetlejuice? It'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to recording that soon. So
Yes.
make sure you're following
And
us to hear it.
and episode 3.5 is a Halloween special. We'll be doing Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So keep your
Yes,
eyes out keep your eyes and ears out for the upcoming episodes.
that's right. And if you're following us, if you have the automatic downloads on, if you have the bell icon on YouTube, you won't ever miss us. So make sure you're doing all of that. Thanks, everyone. See ya.